Good evening, it's Ray Schelin from Proshaper in Charlton, Massachusetts, and we're going to do a little bit more on that tipping wheel. We started part one about a week ago, or maybe a week and a half ago. The first thing I'm going to do with the tipping wheel is, I talked about it in the other video, was wiring an edge. And I got a little arc in this here, and we're going to wire that edge. So I've got a 1/8 inch wire here. This is cold rolled 1/8 inch diameter. And this is, I believe, 19 gauge steel. We're going to need 3/8 lip margin here, and I'm going to mark that off. I'm just going to eyeball it. So you can scratch a line here, but I don't generally like to do the scratching. That's verboten on aluminum. It'll pass on steel, but so there we have approximately 3/8, maybe off a few thousandths here and there. And we're going to tip this up initially at 90 degrees. And this wire is going to follow that line. So what you want to do, this is on a flat plane, so this is pretty easy, but oftentimes they'll be coming up on a fender, going around a corner and stuff. And after you get the 90, the object is to get the 90 up first. And then you want to bend the wire so it conforms very well. You put the wire in with a lot of tension, it's a big problem. So just take your time and bend that wire really nicely. And that's pretty close there now. Alright, so now we're going to go to the tipping wheel, and we're going to tip this up to, we might only go 30 degrees or so, and then finish it with the hammer and dolly. But let's do the tipping wheel operation now. So this is the fulcrum roller, and this is the lever, me pushing up. I can follow that blue line really nicely. There's one pass, and now we'll come up a little bit more with the panel. Alright, so that's good. I'm probably at 30 degrees now. So what we'll do now is just knock this up to 90 with a dolly and a slapper, a dolly and a hammer. This is that nice special dolly I made. It has that curved front angle. Works really good for stuff like this. Now you want to make sure that you hit the root. If you hit like this, you'll get a loose radius. You want a pretty tight radius here. So. And you want to hit with the slapper like this as opposed to like this. If you hit it like this, it's going to bite on those edges. Biting on the edges of the tools is across the board. Every sheet metal tool there is edge bite is a problem. Alright, there's our 90, and we want to get this tape out of here now, and we put the 1/8 inch wire in here. Now these are the little mini vice grips. I get these at Harbor Freight. Some of them are not the best, but Generally they're pretty good. So that's clamped there. Now oftentimes I'll work in the middle of the panel and work my way out. If you have some radius or something that has to be located, generally I'll start in that radius. Say if this thing came up like this, like if it was the bottom of a fender and then it went into the wheel well or something like that. So that's fitting up tight. And I do have a dolly here. I've got this dolly I made, and that will push the wire in. So the next step is we're going to hammer it over, and I'll show you that. Alright, so now I've got the bench set up here. I've got a nice piece of surface ground hardened steel here, but usually I just use the edge of a wood bench. Steel is a little bit better, you get a little bit better hit against it. So I've got this cantilevered out a little bit, and I'm going to work right in that little zone right there. And we'll put a beater bag. It's always good to have a whole bunch of beater bags in your shop because you use them a lot more than stretching metal. We've got a bunch of hammers here. I'm going to make sure that I don't bite on this edge of this hardened steel block. So I can start this off. I'm going to roll this over. I got a dolly here. This doesn't have to be anything special, just something really thin. It'll go in there and push against the wire. So that's your fulcrum. This is your lever. It's always fulcrum and lever, everything you do. So you just kind of nurse this over, a lot of little hits, let them add up. I don't want to bite the hammer, so I'm pushing it over the edge. That's enough for that. And then this is a modified door skinning hammer. Again, you don't want edge bite, so I've sanded this really nice, killed the sides a little bit, and I use mostly this side here. Once in a great while I'll use the other end. This one, another door skinning hammer. This one I put a lot of radius in. I use that when a panel is being wide around a really tight radius. You need that type of radius on your door, on your hammer for knocking that over. So now we're going to knock this over. And when you knock it over, you want to look at this distance right here and you want to make that consistent. So we got that pretty good. Now let's just move this vice grip up a little bit and we'll get a bigger zone that we're doing. Move that vice grip over, go back to this hammer, bring that over a little bit. And you're always looking at this for parallel. And if it's not parallel, you can make this flange longer by biting deeper into the edge. If it's shorter, you want it shorter, you hit higher like this. Your goal is to make this nice and even. So that's looking pretty good. Go back to this hammer. And that's all I can do with this dolly now. Now the next step is a special pair of vice grips. I'm going to go get those now. Right, now we got a pair of vice grips. I just added this piece of 1/2 by 1/8 hot rolled steel. And then I killed all the serrations and grooves in the jaw, so it's a nice soft surface. So now we'll push this in here, cantilever that out a little bit like that. And then we'll take these vice grips. This gives you a nice push surface against, and this gives you a little bite at a time. So then you carefully just crank these like that. And it's actually quite satisfying to figure this all out nicely so that you get this really beautiful, sometimes even better than factory finish. It just wants to be all consistent. Your line wants to be nice, and your edge wants to be even. So we're not going to do the whole thing here. I'm just showing you the process. So you can try a panel at home after you assemble this group of tools. There's nothing expensive here. It's all inexpensive tools. The technique's pretty easy to learn. Just got to practice a little bit. And once you've done a good 3 or 4 inches of perfect edging, wide edging like that, then you can do miles of it. It's all the same basically. As you can see, that pushes right over beautiful. And you can clamp this in nice and tight. Now you could put a stainless wire in there. You could pre-prime this. Oftentimes the factory had bare metal in there, but they lasted generally 50 years, so I don't think you're going to get any problem. But you can always make it better. So there's the result. Looks beautiful. You can make a Pullmax die and set it a little more. You can do it in a planishing hammer and set it a little bit more, but I've never done that. This is usually good enough. And it's nice and smooth. Show you the other side. And that's the wiring the edge. You can see it looks really nice. And then the next thing we're going to do is tipping a radius. And I'll show you that on my other tipping wheel. Alright, what we have here now is a frame pan for the Packard, for the 33 Macaulay Special Packard. And we already did a radius in here on this machine here. This is another tipping wheel setup I made. And this hard line was actually done on the brake. So what has to happen here now is, I've got it marked, that is going to be bent up 90 degrees, and that's the radius range right there. So I'm going to run it through the machine. It doesn't matter if this thing was 20 feet long, this will bend, which is a really nice feature of using this method. And it can be done in the English wheel too, if you can adapt it all to the English wheel. So I'm going to run this through multiple times. Every time, this is the lever, that's the fulcrum. What do we have here? We have a caster wheel that, you know, I never know where I find these things. They seem to find me more than anything else. At flea markets, yard sales, people bring stuff into me. And originally I might have intended it for a caster, and then it gets enlisted into helping on the tipping wheel setup here. These I bought years ago at McMaster Car. They're just rubber casters, and I've got a bunch of them. And what I did was I mounted them on an arbor, put them in the lathe, and I turned them out so they have different radiuses in them. I've got about 3 or 4 of them with different radiuses. So it's just a multiple pass-through to get this to pop up. This is a pretty tight radius. If you try to bend it over a pipe, which is my preferred method of making radiuses, it's going to be very difficult to get this radius over a pipe. And when you use a pipe, and at some point I'll show you that in a video, you always have a blanket. The blanket is the soft fulcrum, and it makes a big difference. And like I said, this could be done on an English wheel too. My English wheels have this system so that these can go on really easy. This could be an accessory to my English wheel, which allows it to be a cantilevered machine, and this could be adapted very easy for the lower. So you don't really need a specialized machine. All right, so now we're going to push this through. You don't have to crank it. You just got to push it. And we're going to put up pressure on it, and we're going to go through slow here. Let's see where we're located here. We're good. A little bit at a time. If you go too much, you'll get a little mark. The issue here is always to be kind of consistent, to go through at the same speed. Don't stop. You get little stop marks if you stop. So you don't need electric motors. This thing will just roll right through beautifully. If you have a helper, it helps out a lot, especially on a big long one. We did a car a couple years ago, and we put a hard feature line, in like a dorsal line, in the back body section on this car body we made. And we actually did the job right in the class when I was doing one of my classes. We had 4 people working on it, and it just came out extraordinarily good. It was a very super difficult problem to do any other way. So you have to be patient. And this one here, you don't keep cranking the pressure down. Once you've got the pressure engaged, that's all you need to do. And each pass through, that angle will come up. As long as you stay within that radius zone, you'll get a nice consistent clean radius. Got a ton of mosquitoes in the shop right now, and they're threatening my accuracy. Let's see, it's starting to come over nicely. This is a frame pan. It's part of a frame pan. The whole frame pan is probably about 6 or 7 feet long, and the front section is a super difficult piece to make yet. So I wanted to do the bulk of it. This is the easier part right now, and we'll weld it together in the middle. I changed the bottom wheel a little bit. This is a flatter one. And the other wheel was biting a little bit and I didn't like it, so I put this flatter wheel in. Bring that down to engage. There we go. And then we're back at it. That's the angle we got so far. So we got that working pretty nicely. The wheel left a little bite here. We'll have to put that in the English wheel and just smooth that out. So, and then we got to finish this off to get the last few degrees. We're probably at about 70 so degrees, and the rest of this, well, I can put I can put this one in here. Let me try that one. That one might pop it over. Alright, so now I think what we'll do is we'll just see if we can get this last little bit right over the edge of a bench over here. So we'll move over to the edge of the bench. So I need just a few more degrees on the bend here, and I'm doing it on the bench. The bench has a nice radiused edge on it, and we get a couple layers of blankets on it. We're just finishing it off to 90 degrees. So I'm pointing out here that when he had it in the tipping wheel, it did leave a couple little marks up on that flat plane on the top, which won't show. And then down the bottom here, this is going to be trimmed off. That's where it's going to bolt up on the running board. So as you see it in the car, you're going to see that lower radius and then the upper radius. And that top panel you don't see anything of. That's totally hidden. So it's looking pretty good. I'm really happy with it. The critical part here is I got the dimensions right. I'm going to fit it onto the car and see how I did. I think it's pretty close. And that's it for tonight on the tipping wheel. It's Wray Schelin. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll be doing a lot more of these videos. Stay tuned.